Saturday, July 16th, 2011, was a humid summer night in Port St. Lucie, Florida. The streets of the quiet suburban neighborhood on Grandeur Avenue were unusually alive that night. Music thumped from one house, laughter, shouting, beer bottles clinking. Teenagers streamed through the front door, some invited, others just showing up after seeing a post on Facebook. The house belonged to Tyler Hadley, a 17-year-old high school student who was, by most accounts, quiet and shy. But tonight, he wasn't acting like it. He was pacing a lot, one friend later said. Just walking back and forth, rubbing his hands through his hair. I thought he was high on something. Inside, about 60 teenagers packed into the single-story home. The place was a mess. Beer spilled on the floor, cigarettes in the sink, furniture overturned. A ping-pong table had been dragged into the living room, and someone wrote graffiti on the wall. Tyler moved through the crowd, trying to look relaxed. He smiled, hugged people, handed out beers, but something about him was off. His friends noticed he seemed distracted and detached. He kept looking over his shoulder, one partygoer said, and he had this blank look in his eyes. Around midnight, the house was still full. People were playing beer pong in the kitchen. Others were smoking outside on the front lawn. One teen tried to open the master bedroom door, but found it locked. Tyler quickly told him not to go in there. "My parents are sleeping," he said, and no one questioned it. But there was a faint smell, something heavy and sour that drifted through the hallway. Some guests thought it was garbage or spilled beer. One girl even joked that it smelled like a dead rat. Tyler laughed. "Yeah," he said, "something like that." As the night went on, the music got louder, photos were taken, videos recorded, and all the while, 2 bodies lay hidden just behind the locked door. Tyler had planned this night for weeks, and now, as dozens of his classmates danced and drank under his roof, he was standing in the middle of his own crime scene. In the days leading up to the party, Tyler wasn't himself. Friends noticed it, his parents noticed it. Even his teachers had seen him slipping further away from the quiet, polite boy they used to know. Tyler had struggled with mental health issues his whole life. He'd been prescribed antidepressants and antipsychotic medication after bouts of severe depression and anger. He often told friends he felt trapped, resentful of his parents, Blake and Mary Jo Hadley, for grounding him or taking his phone and limiting his freedom. Blake was an engineer and Mary Jo was a teacher. Both were considered friendly, hard-working individuals, though Mary Jo often struggled with depression, and their son Tyler showed signs of depression from a young age, and when he was just 10 years old, he was prescribed the antidepressant Lexapro. At 15, he was prescribed Adderall to help with ADHD, and Prozac, another antidepressant. He was also taking hormone medication to treat thyroid problems. Tyler was also experimenting with drugs, mostly marijuana, Xanax, and ecstasy. This mix only worsened his mood swings. And he'd been arrested for various crimes such as arson, burglary, and aggravated battery. During this incident, he severely beat a friend of his, for which he was sent to jail for a week, followed by 2 weeks of house arrest. After this, his mother took his phone away, which only increased his anger and resentment towards her. But Tyler wasn't the only Hadley child. He had an older brother named Ryan, and Ryan didn't seem to share any of the same mental health issues. On the night of his parents' murders, he was away at college. A few days before July 16th, Tyler began telling friends something strange. He said he wanted to kill his parents. Most brushed it off as dark humor. He said it a bunch of times, one friend recalled, like, "I'm going to kill my parents and throw a party," but Tyler was always joking around, so no one thought he meant it. He sent similar messages online. On Facebook, one conversation stood out. "Did you do it? No, but I'm gonna. Bet you won't. Just wait." The day before the murders, Tyler's mother had taken his car keys. He'd been grounded for skipping school and smoking weed. He told a friend later that this was the last straw. That Saturday morning, he texted one friend asking if he could score some Xanax. "You're not going to do anything stupid, right?" the friend asked. "Nah," Tyler replied, "I'm fine." But he wasn't. At 1:15 p.m., Tyler posted a final status update. "Party at my house tonight, hit me up." He had already made up his mind. After Tyler's parents returned home that day, he hid their phones and locked their black Labrador, who he suspected would defend his parents, in a closet. That evening, while his parents relaxed in the living room watching TV, Tyler filled a red drink cup with pills. He took 3 ecstasies, then went to the garage. There, he found a 28-inch claw hammer. He stood there for a long moment, hands shaking, before walking back into the house. At 5 p.m. on July 16, 2011, the Hadley home on Grandeur Avenue was quiet. Tyler's father, Blake Hadley, who was 54 years old, sat in the living room watching TV. His mother, Mary Jo, who was 47, was working at the computer. Tyler stood in the doorway, clutching the hammer he'd taken from the garage. He later told investigators that his hands were trembling and his thoughts were racing. He knew what he was about to do, and he also knew there was no turning back. He approached his mother first. Mary Jo looked up from her desk when she saw him enter the room. She managed to say one word, "Why?" before he struck her. He hit her again and again until she fell to the floor. When Blake heard his wife's screams, he came running down the hallway. He saw his son standing over his wife, covered in blood. "Why?" he shouted. "Why are you doing this?" And Tyler replied, "Why the fuck not?" Tyler turned on him and swung the hammer again. He hit his father repeatedly until he stopped moving. The attack lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, both Blake and Mary Jo lay dead on the floor. Tyler dragged their bodies into the master bedroom, side by side. He covered them with towels, books, and household items, almost trying to hide them from view, even though no one else was home. Then, for the next 3 hours, he cleaned. He mopped the floors, threw blood-soaked towels and clothes into the washing machine, and tried to scrub the walls. When the work was done, he locked the bedroom door and took a long shower. By 8 p.m., he stood in the middle of the house staring at the mess that still remained. Scattered papers, streaks of red on the walls, a trail of footprints leading down the hallway. Earlier that day, Tyler first began inviting people to his party at 12:15 p.m., hours before killing his parents. He financed the event using his deceased parents' credit cards. He was even photographed at an ATM while withdrawing cash from their accounts. By 9 p.m., people began arriving at the Hadley house for the party. At first, only a few cars lined the quiet suburban street, but as the night went on, more and more teenagers showed up. And Tyler greeted them at the door. He was calm, and almost unusually so. He wore a long-sleeved shirt, even though it was the middle of summer, and the air was warm and heavy inside the house. Music played from a speaker in the corner. The living room filled quickly. Red cups, empty bottles, cigarette smoke. A table was covered with junk food, and in the kitchen the counters were sticky with spilled beer. No one thought much of it. This was Tyler's first big party, and people assumed his parents were out of town. But there were signs. The house smelled strange, an odour that some described later as burning meat or rotting garbage. The master bedroom door was still locked, and no one was allowed inside. When asked why, Tyler just said his parents' room was off limits. As the night went on, about 60 people came through the house. Some noticed that Tyler seemed distracted. He would drift from room to room, staring into space. At one point, a friend saw him pacing in the kitchen, muttering to himself. Another saw him laugh suddenly, then fall silent again. Around midnight, one of Tyler's closest friends, Michael Mandel, pulled him aside. He'd known Tyler for years, and he could tell that something was wrong. When they were alone, Tyler leaned in and said quietly, "I killed my parents." Michael laughed, thinking it was a joke, but Tyler didn't smile. He told him exactly how it happened, how he'd used a hammer, how he'd hidden the bodies in the bedroom, and how he cleaned up before everyone arrived. Michael still didn't believe him, so Tyler took him to the locked room. He opened the door just enough for Michael to see inside. The light from the hallway hit the floor, and there, beneath piles of books and towels, Michael saw what looked like blood and a foot. He stumbled back, sick to his stomach, and Tyler shut the door. Michael didn't call the police right away. He didn't know what to do. He actually stayed at the party for another hour or so, talking with Tyler, trying to make sense of what he'd just seen. Before he left, they actually took a photo together. Tyler's expression was blank. It would later become one of the most haunting photos from that night. At 4 a.m., after nearly 6 hours, the last teens began to leave. The floors were covered in trash and beer cans, the walls marked with footprints and stains. Tyler stood alone in the living room, staring at the aftermath of his party and what he'd done. He took one final picture of himself, shirtless, with a blank stare and dark eyes. Then he posted it to Facebook. After leaving the house, Michael Mandel got into his car and sat there for a long time, shaking. It was close to dawn. He couldn't stop replaying what Tyler had told him and what he'd seen in the locked room. He finally drove home, still unsure if he should believe it. Then he called another friend, told them everything, and together they contacted the police. It was just before 5 a.m. when the first officers arrived at the Hadley home. The house was silent now. When officers knocked on the door, Tyler answered. He looked calm, almost emotionless. He told them his parents were asleep, but when they stepped inside, the smell hit them immediately. A thick, metallic odor that filled the hallway. They searched the house and went straight to the master bedroom where the door was still locked. After forcing it open, they discovered the horrific scene that Michael had described. The bodies of Blake and Mary Jo Hadley lay beneath household items. The blood on the walls and floor told the rest of the story. Tyler was taken to the police station for questioning. At first, he barely spoke, and then slowly he began to talk, first in short, quiet sentences, then with more detail. He said that he'd planned the murders for weeks. He even told a friend earlier that summer that he'd wanted to kill his parents and throw a huge party afterwards. No one had taken him seriously, though. On the day of the murders, Tyler said his parents had done nothing unusual. They'd just gone about their evening at home. His father had been relaxing in front of the TV, and his mother was on the computer. Sometime around 5 p.m., Tyler took a hammer from the garage and stood behind his mother. Without a word, he struck her. When his father heard the noise and ran to the room, Tyler turned on him too. He said it took multiple blows before they stopped moving. Afterwards, he dragged them both into the bedroom and locked the door. During the interview, detectives asked him why. Tyler said he'd been angry for years, that his parents were too controlling, that they didn't understand him. But there was no real explanation that made sense. When pressed, he said he'd been thinking about doing it because he wanted to do something big. Detectives noted that he showed almost no emotion. He didn't cry, he didn't ask about his parents. He only asked whether he'd be in jail for a long time. Why would a 17-year-old kill two people who had raised and supported him, and then throw a party over their bodies? Psychological evaluations later revealed that Tyler had long struggled with mental health issues. His parents had done everything they could to help him, counseling, medication, structure, but Tyler's behavior only worsened as he got older. Friends described him as moody and impulsive. He could be quiet and withdrawn one day, then wild and reckless the next. In the months before the murders, his drug use escalated, and he told people he wanted to trip forever, and sometimes said he didn't feel real anymore. Tyler's relationship with his parents had become strained. They were worried about his behavior and had grounded him several times for skipping school, partying, and stealing. According to his friends, Tyler told them he couldn't live like this anymore, but no one believed he actually meant it. There were also signs of deeper psychological trouble. Some classmates recalled that Tyler talked about suicide, claiming he'd once thought about hanging himself. Others said he joked about killing his parents, saying things like, "You'll see what I do one day." On the day of the murders, Tyler took 3 ecstasy pills and told a friend that he might not be alive much longer, or that his parents wouldn't be. It was clear that he was spiraling. A forensic psychologist later diagnosed Tyler with major depressive disorder and possible antisocial personality traits. They believed he was suffering from a mix of anger, hopelessness, and drug-induced paranoia. His sense of reality was fractured, and yet his actions showed planning and control. He hid the bodies, cleaned up, and hosted a party, all signs that he knew what he'd done was wrong. Some experts have argued that Tyler's motive wasn't just anger, it was about control and attention. For once in his life, he wanted to be the center of the story, the one who did something no one could ignore. In his own words, when asked why he did it, Tyler said, "Because I wanted to throw a party." It was a statement that chilled even seasoned detectives. Tyler pleaded no contest to 2 counts of first-degree murder, resulting in his conviction. As Tyler was a minor, he could not be sentenced to death by Florida law, and capital punishment for minors had been abolished nationwide in 2005. In 2014, he was initially sentenced to 2 consecutive terms of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. While in jail awaiting sentencing, Tyler had spent his time signing autographs for fellow inmates. He would take a news article about the murders and write, "It's Hammer Time," across the article and sign with his self-proclaimed nickname, Hammer Boy. In April 2015, the Hadley house was demolished. In April 2016, his sentencing was overturned by an appeal judge who stated the lower court did not consider the correct alternative to a life sentence. But in December 2018, Tyler was resentenced to life in prison.